Hey, it's Ken. It's time for another video. I was looking on YouTube and I saw some videos about nuclear fallout and radiation, and because I didn't feel like the topic was being explained very well, I figured that I might want to go ahead and do a video myself to make it, see if we can't get a little bit more knowledge passed out here, because it's a subject that I would say most people misunderstand. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is, if you're really concerned about this subject, this is the book that you need for the civilian, for the prepper. This will explain a lot of things to you, give you some basic defense ideas, etc. You can get it in print or digital. Doesn't matter to me which one you buy, but if you're really concerned about this issue, this is the book for the prepper. It will give you all the basic knowledge you need to help you survive if there's a nuclear attack. Next thing I'd like to discuss is my experience. If you haven't watched the channel introduction, I spent nearly 21 years in the Marine Corps, and part of that time I was a nuclear, biological, chemical warfare NCO for my battalion. I went to a lot of schools to learn how to do this job. Now, the guy who normally did the NBC NCO at the regimental level, that person was generally an NBC warfare specialist. He actually went to school for nuclear, biological, chemical warfare. And the difference between he and I, that person and myself, is that they were trained in offensive operations and defensive operations. Offensive operations meaning that he's actually handled some of these weapons, and he knows how to use them offensively. In my case, since that wasn't my original MOS, it was an additional duty, I was trained only in the defensive portions of the job, which includes detection, and cleanup, and also determining where the fallout would go, or prediction, if that's what you'd like to call it. So I wanted to get that out there up front to let you know I've actually had specific training in this job, in this field. So that way to make you feel a little bit more comfortable with what I'm saying. Also, before I forget, I'm going to put some links in the description for you. I'll put a link into the book and also a link into a nuclear burst simulator so that you can get in there and play around and see what kind of results that you get if a nuclear burst happened in your area. Now, there are three types of nuclear burst. First is the high altitude nuclear burst that produces an EMP, and they try to get that 2 or 3 miles up in the air so that it produces an electromagnetic pulse that turns all the electricity off. Generally one of the prepper things that people prepare for if we lose power, if we lose internet, etc. The two we're going to talk about today are the surface burst and the air burst. And we're going to talk about the air burst first. Now, in an air burst, the nuclear device does not touch the ground. Neither does the fireball. Okay? So in this case right here, this is what it looked like. Here's the red is the fireball. The blue is the heat radiation. And here, the yellow is the blast damage diameter. Okay, so for our example today, we're going to use one of the United States nuclear devices coming from an ICBM. It's 9 megatons, okay? 9 megatons. So if a 9 megaton warhead detonated in an Airbus burst above your city, it would have the following effects. So, on the red portion, from one end of the red portion to the other end of the red portion is 8 miles. This would be the this would be the fireball, and where the majority of the radiation would be kept inside that 8-mile circle right there. Now, that's the good news and the bad news. The good news is if an 8 megaton warhead hits your city, then, you know, the fireball is only going to be, and the radiation diameter is only 8 miles. The bad news is if you're in the red, then you're dead, because that's where the highest amount of radiation is going to be. In this case, for a 9 megaton warhead, it's 500 rads per hour. Okay, so why is that significant? The reason it's significant is because most experts agree that 50% of the people who receive a total of 450 rads will survive. They will become sick, but they will survive. You can survive 450 rads. Okay? So right here in the center, here's the fireball, then here's the radiation diameter, which is 45 miles. So inside this blue circle, you could get third-degree burns. You can easily get third-degree burns. And then the yellow is the blast. So from this edge of the blast area to this edge of the blast area is 60 miles approximately. And the blast also goes into the red, the blue, and the black. The closer you are to the red circle, the more blast damage there is. Out here at the end of the yellow, it might break your windows. But that'd be about it. So, okay, so we have the fireball, the radiation area, and the blast area. Now, as I said, if you're in the red area, you're going to get 500 rads per hour. In the blue area, if you were drawing these circles around a major city near you, an 8-mile circle, you get 500 rads per hour. In the blue circle, at 45 miles, you would get 100 rads per hour. And in the yellow is that you would get 10 rads per hour. And I said there was some good news, and the real good news is in an airburst situation like this, there's not a lot of downwind fallout. Okay, there is not a lot of downwind fallout. So if you're outside, in this case, a 9 megaton bomb or warhead, if you're beyond 60 miles of your of the target city, then you're going to be getting less than 10 rads per hour. Okay, less. And maybe none at all. But really the only way to accurately determine how many rads you're getting is to buy a device that will determine it for you, like a Geiger counter or something to that effect. Okay, so that is an air burst. The next one we're going to talk about is a surface burst. Now, a surface burst means the warhead or the fireball, either one, has touched the surface. And because of that, all of the dust and particles created from the fireball and the blast will be sucked up into the mushroom cloud. And then those particles will be spread downwind. And the thing you need to know about that particles is the heavy particles fall out the fastest. The heavy particles will touch the ground the fastest, and then the lightest particles will touch the ground last, which is kind of common sense, right? But anyway, here it is. This is the same example, okay? Here is our 9 megaton bomb from our warhead from a ICBM detonating in our area. And here is the circle here is pretty much the same as it would be for an airburst, but because this is a surface burst, then you're going to have the downwind fallout, which is this pattern right here, right? So once again, if you're in the red, you're dead. And then in the blue, you need to take extreme caution. And in the yellow, you need to take serious caution. And that's the best terminology I could come up with it to make it kind of make sense at all. So here's what happens. Once the bomb goes off, in 2 to 3 hours here in the red, you're going to start getting fallout. And then after that, you're just going to start falling out into the blue and then into the yellow. Okay? So once again, the red is 500 rads per hour. The blue is 100 rads per hour. And the yellow is 10 rads per hour. So what's the distance from the burst? Okay? So the red is approximately 150 miles long. The blue is 280 miles long. And the yellow is 410 miles long. And what happens is this fallout will follow the wind direction for the day. Whatever the weather is for the day, that's the way it's going to go. And the prevailing winds, or we could say the normal or average wind direction for the United States is, if you're east of the Mississippi, it's going from east to southeast. And if you're west of the Mississippi, it goes from south to southwest. Now that's prevailing, normal, average. That doesn't mean it happens exactly like that every day. That's just the average, okay? So this is really, if there's a surface burst, that's really when you need to be worried about. If you live far from the city, this is what you really need to be worrying about. Is the fallout from a surface burst, okay? So there is another section I could have drawn out here, but I didn't do that because it's 1 rad per hour. And I didn't really think it was necessary to draw that out. I'm pretty sure you get the picture, okay? That's how it works. Now, another thing you need to know here is half-life. Half-life of the fallout. There is such a thing, and it is a mathematical equation. And this is a graph that comes from the book, right? And here, it starts here at the time of the burst. As the example in the book, this is 1,000 rads per hour. 2 hours later, it's 500 rads per hour. And then down here on the bottom, you look to make sure it's 10 rads per hour. So in our case, using a 9 megaton bomb, up here at the top, at the time of the burst, it's 500 rads per hour. Then 2 hours later, it's 250 rads per hour. And then down here at the bottom, 48 hours later, it is 5 rads per hour. All right, so that's half-life. Within 48 hours, it will go from 500 rads per hour to 5 rads per hour. And that's why it's essential that you take cover. When you first see a nuclear burst, the first thing you need to do is get down on the ground, because if you're not sure how far you are away from the burst, you need to get down on the ground to escape the heat or the radiation portion of the burst, which could give you third-degree burns across your skin. And the second part is the blast. Now, even if you think you're far enough away from the burst, you should still get down on the ground with your feet pointed toward the blast, and tuck your arms underneath your body. And if you do get minor concussion damage, or then if there's any windows nearby you, then being on the ground will help from getting cut by flying objects. After that, you need to take shelter. Okay, so, and as I said, the further away you are from the blast, the more time you're going to have to react and get your whatever supplies you need and yourself and your family into a shelter. Now, obviously, if you're in the red zone, then as I said earlier, if you're in the red zone, you're probably dead. Okay, so why that all matters to you is because most experts agree that a person who has 400 or has been exposed to 450 rads total, not per hour, but 450 rads total, has a 50% chance of surviving. You might get sick, but you're not going to die. And that's the key. That's why you need to take shelter. The next question is, how long do I stay in the shelter? Let me pick up my diagram here real quick again, just to make sure we're on what we're talking about. As I said earlier, if you're red, you're dead. That's really high radiation in this area of the fallout right here. Very high. Okay? Then in the blue, if you're in the blue, then it takes about 3 weeks. 3 weeks in your shelter. And then in the yellow, a general rule of thumb is 2 weeks. Okay? Now, there's really no way to tell what the exact amount of radiation your area is getting unless you have, you have to have some type of Geiger counter or something to measure it. But it's a general rule of thumb that after 3 weeks or 2 weeks, whichever area you're in, that the radiation has degraded to a point that you can go outside and there's not enough radiation there to make you sick, let alone kill you. Okay? So 2 to 3 weeks, depending on where you are, you need to be undercover. Now, the next question is, how do you know? The best plan is to say it's the worst case scenario, and if you don't have a Geiger counter to test the area you're in, then you need to get under shelter to protect yourself from the fallout. And then stay in for the general rule of thumb, whatever time that may be, 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then you can go outside. All right, so my whole point of this discussion is this phrase, mutually assured destruction. You know that everybody dies. That's what it means. That's what mutually assured destruction means. Everybody dies. Well, that's not true. Not everyone is going to die. There are going to be high casualty rates. All right, there are going to be high casualty rates. There is going to be an EMP. That's an after effect of the nuclear burst. So losing power, losing cell phone towers, etc. That's going to happen. However, not everyone will die in the initial burst, and not everyone will die in the after effects. And you seriously increase your chance of surviving by taking cover immediately after a nuclear burst. Another way you can increase your chances of long-term survival is to take the potassium pills for nuclear radiation. And what that does is it floods your thyroid with potassium. And what it helps to do, if your thyroid is flooded with potassium, then the radiation cannot get into your thyroid. So I'm not sure if you know this or not, so I'm going to say it anyway. Every chemical has a target organ. Sometimes the target organ is your lungs, sometimes it's your liver, your gallbladder, your kidney, your reproductive organs. But whichever one it is, if enough of that chemical gets into the target organ, it will damage the organ. And the target organ for radiation is the thyroid. So you take the pills for 7 days, or read the instructions, follow the instructions. You take the pills, and what that does, it blocks the radiation from entering your thyroid. And it's really important that you follow the instructions and do not take more pills than what the instructions tell you to take. Okay, this is not a more is better situation. Just take the amount of pills that the instructions tell you to take. Now, I will say this, based on my experience, most military or governments would rather use an airburst than a surface burst. And the reason that is that the destruction is more widespread. All right? The EMP that's created by an airburst travels further. So there's more damage to buildings, there's more damage to resources that you have, your infrastructure. So an airburst is the goal most of the time. So if you're worried about this event, this type of an event, then you need to buy the book. You need to read it, get familiar with it, and then go into the nuclear detonation simulator that I'm going to put in I'm going to link to in the description, and you can go in there and pick a city near you, and then you can see what the effects would be for your area. Now, once again, prevailing winds east of the Mississippi, or east to southeast, and west of the Mississippi, prevailing winds is south to southwest. So you can go in there and move the wind direction so that you can see where all these different zones will go. So I hope that helps you out. I hope it makes you, if you're really concerned about this event, you'll go and check it out. Okay, so I'm going to recap real quick here. If you see a mushroom cloud on the horizon, the first thing you need to do is get down on the ground with your feet toward the blast, and keep your arms underneath your body to protect yourself from the excessive heat and any flying missiles that the blast creates. After that, you want to seek shelter. And then if you know what area you're in, then you know that you need to stay in the shelter for 2 weeks or for 3 weeks. But the only way to actually determine how long you need to stay in that shelter is to use some type of device that we call a Geiger counter. Okay, so I hope this clears up a little bit of the confusion, gives you a little bit more information than what I'm seeing out there in YouTube land. And I hope you have a blessed day. We'll see you next time.